All right. So you can see my screen and you can hear me okay. Correct?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So welcome to the session 14, which is the transformation and the AMDP and the routines. So all the exciting stuff. But before that, of course, this is the pre-session Q&A. So we look at some questions and answers if you have. And then we will start the main session. Today we have a lot of ground to cover. So we will not delay the class. I mean, we will start exactly at 8:30 and we'll go from there. So let me see if there are any questions. Let me refresh.
Devanshu,
Okay.
I could not create Srini here.
Yeah, Srini, I saw your email. Yes.
Okay, good.
I saw your email. Would you mind posting your questions on the chat, in this chat?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I will then add it and then I'll try to answer it.
Sure.
Okay, so we have from Shakti, we have few questions, I think. Let's see. All right, let me copy them and put it here. So Q&A, Shakti. Okay, then we have few from Shinu and from Vijay as well, I think. Let's see.
No questions.
Okay, so no questions from Vijay. So we have from Shakti and Shrinu, you have probably pasted. Let me check. Yeah, okay. Let me copy them and paste it here from Shrinu.
Yeah, when I say the two DTPs like info source to standard ADSO or write optimized to ADSO, standard ADSO.
Okay, let's answer them one by one. So Shakti, let's start with your questions. So and then Shrinu, I'll come to you as well.
Okay, sure.
So Shakti, first question is how field-based ADSOs are faster in loading compared to info-object-based ADSOs? Because there is the tables, the info-object tables, if there are text tables, if there are master data tables, there are different master data tables are there, M table, P table, Q table, etc. So they don't have to be filled in and SIDs don't have to be generated. When there are info objects, SIDs are generated for the info object master data. So when it is field based, all these additional activities which are relevant for info objects like SID generation, the different MPQ table, check with those tables. If they're not populated, populating those tables. Those sort of tables mostly are populated when the master data is loaded, but when the transaction data is loaded, the SIDs are definitely generated and checked against those tables. So that is an extra activity during the load. And then, of course, if you have field-based ADSO, which is inbound queue only, activation is not there. Whereas in standard ADSO or the data mart ADSO, activation is another extra step which takes time. So it's a combination of both. The info object related activity happening in the backend, such as SID generation and check. And also if there are two tables, then activation is also not required. So that way fields are very fast. And also because field-based ADSOs can be at any layer. It can be staging layer, it can be your integrated data warehousing layer, or it can be your, yeah, actually these are the two, staging and integrated data warehousing layer. So all these ADSOs will be in these two layers only. So very easily, without creating any info object, you can do a quick prototype of field-based. You can just take the data source and as data source as template, create staging ADSO, and as staging ADSO as template, create data warehousing ADSO and immediately run a report without even creating a single info object. You can do that. So that way the prototyping and profiling also becomes very quick. Earlier in prior BW versions, you could not do that. You had to create info objects. So that way it is faster and prototyping and quick profiling is also easier. How and when the external SAP HANA views generated using ADSO creation are used. Okay, so if you want to expose your BW data to third-party reporting, so what happens is if you have a HANA database, there can be BW reporting sitting on top, and there can also be external reporting sitting on top of the same HANA database. So BW will get mostly data from enterprise systems like S4 HANA or success factors or any other enterprise systems. But there can be third party databases which company uses, like for example, they can have Oracle systems or SQL Server systems from which they are already loading data, say for example, in an external schema. Now that is the legacy data. Now what client says that, okay, I have two parallel reportings going on. One reporting team is the enterprise reporting team, which uses the BW for HANA data. But there is another parallel team which uses Cognos or Tableau, and they are directly writing or creating the reports based on those SQL Server data or Oracle's data, which is coming in an external schema. Now, many times what happens is they want the enterprise data also to be included in their reporting. They say that, yes, I am getting the legacy data and I'm doing the reporting, but I also want a little bit of a reference from the enterprise data to check whether, what is the value in the enterprise side or what is the data at enterprise side. In that case, if you want to expose your BW data, that means your enterprise data, to an external reporting which is happening on the same database, then you create or generate your CVs from the ADSOs or from the composite providers. At both level it's possible. And then those calculation views, they use the external reporting which is happening. They will take that CV and they will include it in another CV, a ZCV, which they might have created, because it's not recommended for you to directly use the generated CVs, because generated CVs will change. As soon as you change the ADSO, generated CVs will change. So it's not recommended for you to directly use them, but indirectly they use it, meaning they will create their own ZCV where one of the underlying CVs is your generated CVs, and then they will do that reporting. In that way, they combine the enterprise data with their third party reporting data which is going on. That is one use case.
Yeah, so Debanshu, if we create this external HANA views, they will be create like CV, external CV also will be created along with it. You mean that HANA view is the calculation view?
HANA view is the calculation view. Yes. When it says external HANA view in the ADSO, that means it's a CV, it's a calculation view. So let me open any ADSO. So when you check that box which says external SAP HANA view, this is not a DB view. This is a calculation view which gets generated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And if you want to see that this particular ADSO has generated which calculation view and which package that calculation view is sitting in. So I've already told you there's a T code. Anyone remembers that T code? How can we check that mapping that this ADSO generated this CV? Where can we check that? Guys, come on. We have discussed this. Bonus points for someone who can tell me the T code.
RSP2 underscore admin.
RSP2 underscore admin. Okay. No, there is no such T code. RS to HANA underscore admin. RS means your ABAP server. To HANA, that means database. To RS to HANA underscore admin will give you the list of BW objects and corresponding HANA calculation views which gets generated, under which package it gets generated, what time and by whom. So all that information, see, it can be a composite provider, it can also be an ADSO level, both will generate HANA calculation view, and you can check that there. Now that is one use case. Second use case is BPC. When you do planning, then in certain scenarios, what you have to do is you will have an ADSO, and that ADSO has to be combined with another CV, which is your, say, for example, your actual CV coming from AC DOCA, or billing data, which is VBRP. So you have a calculation view already, but you want to combine the ADSO data with that particular CV, which is sitting in the HANA DB of S4 HANA. Say, for example, we are talking about embedded BW and the HANA DB of S4 HANA. So this is BPC within S4 HANA, BPC optimized for S4 HANA. So in those scenarios also, sometimes we'll have to generate the CV out of ADSO and then use that CV along with another CV and then finally use it in the composite provider. So there are sometimes use cases. So these are the two most frequently used scenarios. Okay. How to enable analytic privileges for SAP HANA view? Okay. So analytic privilege is you have to create. If you're talking about a ZCV, which is there in your HANA database, you have to create analytic privileges. So they just, you can right click on a package and you can say new analytic privilege and you can create the analytic privilege, or you can also have repository analytic privileges where you will write the, you have to write a code and then the roles are created in which the analytic privileges will reside, and then you can provide those roles to users. So if you want to create analytic privileges, you have to create it manually in SAP HANA Studio. Now, there is another scenario where when the CV is generated out of a ADSO, say for example, and if you have analysis authorizations already created on top of the ADSO, then the analytic privileges gets automatically created for this ADSO corresponding to the analysis authorizations created in the BW side. So generation, at the time of generation, it is automatic. If analysis authorizations are created, if there is no analysis authorization, then no analytic privileges will be created. And if you're talking about ZCV, which you created, then you have to create analytic privileges separately in HANA Studio. There is just like how we create calculation view, we create table functions and all, there is another object called analytic privilege. So you create that, you provide the CV name, and then you provide the field name on which you want row level security. When you're talking about analytic privilege, you're talking about row level security, meaning one guy needs company code 1000 data, he or she should not see company code 2000 data, but the other person should see 2000 only. So if you have that kind of row level security requirement, then you go for analytic privileges and then you create them in your HANA Studio.
Devanshu, when analysis authorization, you mean to say that the role which we used to create in PFCV or RSEC admin, is it?
RSEC admin. I'm talking about the RSEC admin analysis authorizations. PFCV is for the roles, right? RSEC admin is for the analysis authorizations. So I'm talking about if you have any analysis authorizations defined on this ADSO, because when you define in RSEC admin, you have to provide the info provider name. So then if your ADSO is there and analysis authorizations are defined, then corresponding analytic privileges will be automatically created there. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm trying to log in into HANA Studio. So that's how you will create. I'll just show you the analytic privilege, but you have to create it manually in your HANA Studio. So you go to your repository and then the package where you have created all your CVs and all the artifacts. So for example, this one which we created, and then you can have, you right click on it. Okay, it's a little slow. Okay, while it comes, let's see what are the other questions. SPOs, what are we replacing with BW for HANA in real environment? SPOs are semantically partitioned object, meaning you have multiple DSOs or multiple info cubes. Say for example, one for North America, one for Europe, one for Asia Pacific, one for ANZ, so on and so forth. So if you want different regions to be having their own separate DSOs, which is sometimes better in terms of data volume management and keeping things separate, then we create SPOs. This is basically a group. So in BW for HANA, semantic groups have replaced it. In the PowerPoint presentation, I have given the details of that. So there is something called semantic group. That means you will create a template, and that template you can just replicate multiple ADSOs from that template. You can generate multiple ADSOs from that template. And that's what is called semantic groups. That has replaced SPOs in BW for HANA. Real-time example I just gave you. So if you want region-wise separate ADSOs, if you have huge volume and your one ADSO will not be sufficient, and you also want to keep the regional data separate because the transformations might be different for them. So then you will create a semantic group which will act as your template. And then in that semantic group, you will create the different ADSOs. Okay, see here. So if you right click on a package, in addition to calculation views, attribute views, and analytic views, anyways, these are obsolete. In addition to calculation views, table functions and all, you have something called analytic privilege. So you have to create it for a ZCV. And when you create analytic privilege, then it will ask you, okay, so this is the error because it's a structural package. So I have to create another package for analytic privileges, and then you can create. So let's say right now I'll just create in the calculation view itself. So you will create analytic privilege, and this analytic privilege you will give the name, right? ZAP analytic privilege test. I'm just giving any name right now. Okay, let this be. So this is subtype is SQL analytic privilege or classic analytic privilege. Classic means XML based. So previously we used to have classic XML based analytic privilege, but now the recommendation is SQL based analytic privilege, but you can use any one. Let me show you the previous one, and then you can also check the SQL one. So there is a slight difference between the two, but the concept is the same. The analytic privilege row level security concept, that is the same for both. So when you create it, then you provide the name of the calculation view. Then within that calculation view, what is the field on which, say for example, company code, which I just gave an example, might be one of your fields where you want to segregate users. That user A should not access anything other than company code 1000. User B should not access anything other than your 2000, so on and so forth. So first step is you add your CV here. Then you add your attribute. Then you add your operator. Operator means equal to, greater than, between, all those things, because it might not be just one value. One user, if you want to authorize the person for 3 different company codes, then you will go for between. If you want greater than 1000, so those operators are there. Then validity will be there, and then the actual restrictions you can apply. Attributes means the fields, the actual fields on which you want to do that. So your model, your validity, this is your validity, this is your attributes, and this is your restriction, meaning greater than, equal to, or less than equal to with the operators. You can also have dynamic in that way. So this is how you will create an analytic privilege. Okay, so SPOs, I just told you, semantic groups have replaced them. Can we see one example of direct update ADSO with API and HAP each, any real-time scenarios? No, that is not covered in this particular training. Direct update ADSO with API and HAP needs some configuration in the system, and API configurations are not yet done. I have not tested that. So I cannot show you in system. I will not be able to show you that. HAP HANA analysis process, yes, that I will probably show you if time permits. We will go to HAP. But the real-time scenario for direct update ADSO, the real-time scenario are either For planning, data slices. Again, this is already mentioned in the PPT, PowerPoint, which we went through for the ADSOs. So data slices can be maintained in direct update ADSO. This is part of the BWIP. That's what it's used. Or if you want to transfer the value of the query, suppose if you have a query and you want to dump the result of that query in an ADSO for external usage or to send it to third party or whatever for other reasons, then you can create a HANA analysis process which takes the query as the source and then dumps it into a direct update ADSO, and then you can send the data to third party systems accordingly. So that's one of the real-time examples where we use direct update ADSO with HANA analysis process or direct update ADSO with planning. Data slices, okay, this is, you are going into a BWIP territory. Data slices basically are to restrict the data which you don't want user to update. Say for example, you are in period 7 in the fiscal year, you are in period 7. So period 1 to 6 are closed. Now you don't want any user to enter any planning data for period 1 to 6. So then you have to define a data slice and you have to say that anything which is less than equal to the current period in the fiscal year, current fiscal year, the cells in the analysis office workbook should be grayed out. They cannot be edited or the value cannot be entered there. So basically you are restricting the data for closed periods to not enable any user to enter data. So that's how we protect the data, and for that you have to create a data slice. How do we define them? That is basically in the BWIP, you will define them in RS plan. So you can define the data slices and everything in RS plan. So the main transaction code for your BWIP is RS plan. Right now, a lot of things can be done in Eclipse itself, but this is where you will do it. So once you provide the name of the info provider, right? So let me see. Okay, when you go to display, okay, this is not a plan enabled. Okay, so does not exist or cannot be edited. So it has to be a plan enabled ADSO. Once you have a plan enabled ADSO, then you can have data slices defined when you go for info provider, and when you say display, there are data slices there. I don't know if I have anything which I can show you. Maybe let me see if I have anything in BWIP which I might have created. ADSO probably. Okay, so let's take this ADSO as an example. So I'll copy the name. I'll provide this. Okay. So when you go into display of a plan enabled ADSO, you have something called data slices here. You have the CRs, characteristic relationships are there. You can have data slices defined here, and you can have some central setting. This is all part of planning, integrated planning. So data slices means how you can protect the data. So right now there are no data slices, but you can always go into change mode and then you can create the data slices for them. So basically to protect that time period which you don't want user to enter data into. Write interface enabled, any real-time examples? Yeah, boards. So sometimes boards directly wants to write data into BW info providers or cloud-based systems. They want to write data directly. So then in that case, we use the write interface enabled, which directly writes into your ADSO tables. And that has replaced the data service push, which was the push mechanism directly from the web portals, HTTP based portals. So that is the real-time scenario. Okay, so coming to Srinu, should I create 2 DTPs or only one? If one, which one I need to create? Please see screenshot. Can you put that screenshot also in the chat, Srinu?
Yeah, 1 second.
I don't know whether it will allow you to put a screenshot or not sure.
No, it's not.
Not allowing you?
I think it will. You need to file attach something. I think.
Yeah, can you
There is
attach
a
a
file,
file
no?
here? Maybe you can try that.
Yeah, I can do that.
Or let me open Gmail. Srinu, this one I think. No, not this. You sent an email yesterday or after this email, right?
Yeah, yeah.
After this email, let's see. Yeah, this one. Yeah, this one. Okay, let's see. Okay, so you're saying, so there are a lot of screenshots. Which one you want me to take?
The first one is the whole data model, and second is like hide DTP, and third one is hide transformation. If you come to the last screenshot.
Okay.
Yeah, this particular one. The question I have here, like there is an info source between the corporate memory ADSO and the standard ADSO.
Corporate
So,
memory and send, yeah, yes, correct.
so when we create a DTP, it is giving me two options. One is from the corporate memory and the other one is from the data source.
Yeah.
So which DTP should I create here?
So it depends. Which DTP are you trying to deal with? If you are loading data directly from the data source, which should be the part of your daily process chain, then you should choose data source. If you are trying to transfer data from your corporate memory staging ADSO to your standard ADSO, then you should choose the staging ADSO as your source of the data transfer.
Okay,
So
but
it depends which one you are trying to create.
Yeah, but which one should be in the process chain? Like in this case,
data source.
Process and what about the corporate? If I choose the DTP on the above, like corporate memory to standard ADSO.
Yeah, then also see it will create a DTP for you, right? There's no problem. You have to create a DTP for future purposes. It's not required from a daily loading point of view, but it is definitely required whenever there's a problem and whenever you have to rebuild the data. So keep both the DTPs active, but when you create a process chain, in that process chain, you remove, if it is already included, this DTP from the staging ADSO, if it is included, then you remove that and just keep one DTP which is there from the data source. But creation wise, you should create both of them. But in process chain, you should only keep the one from the data source.
Okay. So when we write these lookup logics and all, like the info source, right? Like so when the mapping happened from info source to standard ADSO,
yes,
that is
is
where
where
we
you
are,
will write your main business logic. Correct.
not from the corporate memory to standard ADSO.
Corporate memory to standard ADSO is via the info source, right?
Yeah.
So corporate memory to info source, you should not write the routines. Corporate memory to, the info source to standard, you should write the routines. Because if you write the routines in corporate memory to info source, then the same type of routine you also have to write in the data source to info source. You don't want to duplicate that effort. See why info source is required. Why info source is recommended in that flow is because when you see this flow, so let me open one flow. Let me open this flow. So if you see the flow, basically we write, okay, ignore this right hand side part. Just let's focus on, this is my staging ADSO, this is my info source, this is my integrated data warehousing layer ADSO, and this is a parallel flow which is coming. So this right side, this part you can ignore for now. Now what's happening is there are two flows. One flow is from data source to my integrated data warehousing layer directly via info source. And then there is one flow from the staging via info source to my integrated development layer. If I write my logic from here to here, then the same logic I also have to write from here to here. So here to here, here to here. I have to write the same logic, because when you rebuild, the same logic has to be also applied when you rebuild or when you fix any issues. So that's why, in order for you to not duplicate your effort, just write the business logic once. That's all. You don't have to worry whether the data is coming from your corporate memory or your data source, because both the flows will have this business rules and you will just write it once. That is the benefit of having the info source. So keep the logic 1:1 from here to here, keep the logic 1:1 from here to here, and then your business rules from here to here. We are going to do that. We are going to do exactly that today. Okay. Yeah, lookup logic, which DTP are required. So I think I've answered all the 4. But today, when I will create the flow right in front of you, just in few moments, that will be much more clearer.
Yeah, another question, Devanshu, like you created like one data source ADSO, let's say like ZDCST01. When I search it, I can find it, but how do I know under which folder or under which package it is there?
Oh, that's a good question. So there is a small icon here which says link with editor. Okay. So what will happen? See, let me just close everything. Okay, not the tree. Let me close all the tree expand. Now ZDC SDITM. Let's try to find it. So we'll do Control H and then make sure your project is the project which you want to search it in. ZDC SDITM. What is the name exactly? ZDC SDITM. Yeah. So I'll do a search, and then the search will give me that, okay, there it is. Now double click on it. Once you double click on it, if you have this item checked, immediately on the left side, you will see that which folder it is in, and that folder is in which info area. So you have to make sure that the small box the small icon which is linked with editor is selected. Or there's another way is properties. So when you double click on the ADSO and if you go to properties, there also it will tell you that which info area it is under.
Okay, thank you.
Both ways you can have. Okay, so let me stop the recording for the Q&A.